Aggregate means 5 groups. Each one is a group by itself, the body or materiality, feelings. Now we started talking about a perception. One of the important points of the teaching is to disentangle the strong clinging to these groups of phenomena, like the body or materiality. When they come as a group, they seem very real and could even be attractive. They identify with it and cling to it. So the body is made of many parts. When you break it up, the body doesn't look so nice after all. But that still comes under samatha. But even then, for certain people, from the samatha, one quickly goes into vipassana. For example, some monks, they started just reciting the 32 parts of the body. And by reciting it, they became arahants. Or Arahant Sivali, it seems Arahant Sivali was 7 years in the womb. So the moment he was born, he became a monk. When people asking how is it to be in the womb, he said he was like hell. So when he became a monk, usually what they do is, when they shave their hair, and the hair would fall in the hands. So when he saw the hair fall under the hands, he became an arahant. It's a strong detachment from this body, and it goes further than that, especially if you have this strong vipassana background. That's why you see that all these objects which are basically samatha, but they can turn easily into vipassana. Find it in the Satipatthana Sutta. On the other hand, people do vipassana, find these objects come to them because they're connected, so they're doing their body sensations, and then after that they see the bone. For example, I once was doing rising, falling, right? Then I actually saw my intestines and my stomach moving like that. I said, this is horrible. But to be actually going into vipassana, you have to go into the Paramattha Dhammas, the ultimate realities, starting with the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, wind. And the reason is obvious, which I have mentioned before, that through these elements, then you can go directly into the 3 universal characteristics: impermanent, suffering, non-self, for realization. Then it comes to feelings. Feelings also come in groups. First you have these feelings as painful, then as pleasurable, then as neutral. Then even these 3 you can subdivide further into how it arises according to the 6 sense doors. This helps to overcome the attachment to pleasurable feelings and identifying with feelings. People who identify with feelings and sensations goes up and down like a yo-yo. Are the people who are very emotional. Italian joke, bad joke. Who can be more emotional than Italians? This is very general. Balkans, the Yugoslavia, Serbia, and all that. Is it? I haven't met many of these people, but whoever I met, they are extremely. The others are the Brazilians, very emotional. A lot of fire element in them. Again, I haven't seen many of them, but whoever I've seen, very emotional. One of them actually asked me, do you think Brazilians are good for doing metta, loving kindness? I said, very good. And I suppose the attachment to feelings are also very strong. The different reasons for the arising of feelings. Culture has something to do with it. But we won't go into this yet. But definitely if a person is less attached and identified with the feelings, he would go down. He will cool down, like a fire cool down. The fire will turn cold. So when you're able to see the feeling is made out of many types of things come together, and the feeling is not so real, so how can you identify with it? How can you attach to it? So it won't be so intense. So as the Satipatthana text says on feelings, to understand pain as a thorn, to understand pleasurable feelings as suffering, and to understand the impermanence of neutral feeling, and develop detachment from feelings. From there he gets the freedom from feelings. When you get freedom from feelings, you get the happiness freed from feelings, which is Nibbana. So the basic lesson is peace is better than joy. In the way, of course, we have explained before in the Satipatthana Sutta on the feeling foundation of mindfulness. And so now we come to the perception and formations. These two come under Dhammanupassana. Just to repeat a little bit of what we said yesterday, in case you did not hear or did not understand. Again, this perception comes as a group. Past perception, present perception, future perception, gross perception, fine perception, external perception, internal perception, far perception, and so on and so on. Till just in the moment of time you see something, there are a lot of perceptions together in there. For example, the bell. What is this? So you can see. So what perception is? Perception of a cushion. But in this perception of cushion, there are many perceptions there. Perception of red color, perception of black color, perception of so on, so on. Soft. So there are many perceptions. Perception of somebody, perception of person. You see a person like, who's the most famous person in Italy? Berlusconi. So when you see Berlusconi, you have different type of perception there. Perception of his eyes, perception of his ears, perception of his mind, perception, and all those things, they all make up Berlusconi. So, but who is really Berlusconi? I think it's better to know yourself than Berlusconi. Watch your rising and falling. Just in case you have to emphasize on this, what is perception? I wrote something here. So come to the question, do we make use of mindfulness of perceptions in our practice? Of course, otherwise you won't put it in the Satipatthana Sutta. First, it's the object of clinging and identification. The Thai usually refers to the past perception, the memories, because people are very attached to the memories and identify themselves according to their memories, who they are. For example, if a person has Alzheimer, so his memory is finished. Do you know somebody with Alzheimer? Does he remember who he is? Who is he? So it's non-self.
Sometimes they are in a state as 21 and actually they are 16.
So, yeah, it's non-self, but they don't have the perception of non-self. That means they don't have the insight into non-self. Non-self means nature or reality. Firstly, the perception does not hold the whole link. They don't not able to remember and hold on to that memory that maintains the continuity of the individuality. But we are more involved with the perception of the present. As I said, when you want to understand reality, you're more involved with the present. So we do make use of the perception in our meditation. For example, when you do noting, there are three things here. There's noting, there's noticing, and there is the naming. The three things. When we say note, rising is rising, falling is falling, right step, left step. When anger rises, not anger, craving rises, not craving. So when you anger, you not anger, craving, you not craving. Will the craving go away? So everything eventually passes away. But before it passes away, what has it done to you? So when you're noting, it may not go away so easily. So the point is you have to note it mindfully. Noticing is more close to noting it mindfully. For example, when you're meditating, then finally something coming. Aha! What is this? Lost and pop. So, but noting itself, you just say, this is that is perception. This one can be quite mechanical. Right step, left step, right, left. Sometimes you mix up, don't know right or left. That's perception, but no mindfulness. And that's why sometimes people do samatha, they don't emphasize mindfulness. That's what happened. Until everything is forgotten, the mind is in a blur. When I first tried to, there's a funny story. When I first tried to do samatha, there was a Thai man there who advised me, but Venerable Sir, don't do samatha, it's dangerous. I said, why? Then he told me a story. This monk was doing samatha on the fire kasina. He light a candle in front of him, his look at the candle. Then he became sleepy. So he went there and he burned himself. You're not mindful. Of course, in Malaysia also something like that happened. Because they meditate, some of them face the wall. When they get sleepy, no. So when you meditate and you take noting, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling, sometimes the mind already gone haywire. There's no more rising, falling, but you're still seeing. Naming is different. Naming is giving a name to things. This is rising, this is falling, this is right step, this is left step. This is giving a name to the experience. This is adding another word concept to it. The idea of noting is to first call up your mindfulness. Second, bring the mindfulness to the object. Keep the mind to the object. This is vitaka, vichara, initial and sustained application. And this comes about only when you have perception of it. So when you see the mind noting and so on, noticing things, then what you're watching is perception. Then if you try to make sure that your perception comes with mindfulness, then what happens sometimes, you see that when you notice your rising and falling and so on, the objects after some time become more and more subtle. When it becomes more subtle, that means the marks and the signs of object are not so strong. And because of that, you can say that the perception is weak. So when the perception is weak, if your mindfulness is still present, then what is more obvious is the consciousness. And so when you watch rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, you're still mindful, there's still a little bit there, one little point, ding dong, ding dong. They don't seem to be there anymore, but you're still mindful. So what are you watching? You're watching the consciousness. So from here you can see the difference between consciousness and perception, consciousness. Consciousness is more general, and more inclusive of everything. Perception is more specific. Both are types of knowing an object, and both are there all the time. When there's consciousness, there's perception. When there's perception, there's consciousness. But over a period of time, you know that they are different. When is there no perception? When there's no consciousness. When is there no consciousness? When consciousness is not there. For a person, for example, if you attain to Nirodha Samapatti, that is very rare. That means you must be at least an anagami or with 8 jhanas. So that at that moment, consciousness stops. The other type is when Arahant Parinibbana. So other than that, the perception will stick to you. Consciousness will stick to you. Like they said, when you get married, until death do us part. Until Nibbana do us part. Meanwhile, the consciousness can do many things to you. You don't take care of the consciousness properly, it will hit you nicely. So you notice the perception when you notice very strong and distinct objects. For example, pain, when it's strong, then you can see the perception of pain and suffering. So when another object is very strong, the sound you hear very strong, then you get very strong perception of the different types of sound that come and go. That means there's very clear knowing. But remember, this knowing is more of perception than consciousness. Really, you don't differentiate. You just make sure you're mindful. Now, the interesting thing is when the perception is strong, it doesn't mean it's mindful. That means if the object appears very clearly to you, it doesn't mean you're mindful. So you're eating your favorite dish. I don't know what you like. You like pasta? Let's say pizza Napolitana. Very good. So when you taste, really very good. No, some people when they taste wine, they can know this one is 1946. This one is 1820, even better. Very sharp perception, but craving. Different thing. Once I asked this person, he will say he used to smoke drugs. Sometimes he goes a bit crazy, he runs about naked. So anyway, so I said, when you smoke drug, you have a lot of hallucinations. Very clear, Sometimes they feel like meditation objects. So what's the difference? He says, at that time the mind is a bit neurotic. So this comes from the horse's mouth. So don't be fooled by clear objects. Clear objects means clear perception. Strong perception, not clear, strong perception. So in this case, the clarity can be deceiving. The object is clear, but the mind is not. So how do you know? Best of luck. Remember, mindfulness is three faculties: things: clarity, peacefulness, softness. When the clarity is not so clear, then it's the peace. So you watch your heart. Your heart at peace. You have all this desire, so nice. Stop. You watch your heart craving, not at peace. If you're really mindful, then eat mindfully, tasting. When you do tasting, chewing, taste becomes flat. So you know the perception. When perception is strong, that means the object is clear and strong, and then you note the perception is clear and strong. Make sure there is mindfulness. Then this the question coming with perception. There's the remembering and the forgetfulness. Memory is a strange thing. Veronica, you deal with the mind. What is memory? What makes you remember some things and what makes you forget certain things? And to able to link perception to certain objects. It's the conditioning of the perception. So when you look at the perception, you find that it is linked. All dhammas are linked in some way by their conditioning, which means all objects are linked to other objects of the conditioning. For example, I haven't seen somebody for a long time. When I see him, if I know him before, then I recognize this is that person, and from there I can think of all the good and bad things that he did. So the perception is a linkage, because there's some similarity of perception in this object and that object action. For example, when I see somebody head without hair, I have perception without hair. What happens to me? Other people without head, which have no hair. But in this case, it's good. It includes monks. And many of my good friends are without hair, whether monks or not. Some people ask me, Bhante, why all your friends have no hair? The other one is people with buffy. This one. So that's how the linkage goes. But sometimes you have a bad experience with a person without hair, and every time you see the person without hair, you link back to that bad person. So when you watch an object, you find that when you get a strong perception, it tends to see the conditions of the perception, it tends to link. And so you know connection, and you be careful what the connection is. It can be even intuitive, because if the perception comes with a certain kind of intuition or wisdom faculty, it will link to certain things deeper than that. This is an interesting thing connected with meditation, especially in Vipassana. Vipassana, perception is involved with the perception of reality. It's perception of impermanence, suffering, non-self. For example, impermanence, we say anicca sanya, that is perception of impermanence. In this case, it comes under insight. In this case, perception of impermanence equals insight, because your insight refers to that of insight knowledge. That means anicca, not because anicca has different meanings. One is the conceptual impermanence. For example, you lose something, you say, oh, it's impermanent. And you look at your face in the mirror, you see many more wrinkles. Oh, impermanent. You can see your new car, somebody scratch it. Oh, impermanent. Yes, it's impermanent, no? Really a reflection of a deeper reality. But you cannot include as this anicca sanya. Anicca sanya is very specific for this actual moment-to-moment change of the three characteristics. In one of the texts, it describes this perception of impermanence as a knife cutting on the water. So if water is flowing, your perception cuts through it. Only for a brief moment, it's not there anymore. Now this poses some kind of dilemma at times, because every experience arises and passes away. And when the perception is also perceived as such, then nothing sticks. Not just consciousness, the moment knowing is not there. So everything is obviously a mirage. And that's why in the other sutta we mentioned about the body as a form, probably a better word is scum. Or feelings is perceived as a bubble, and perception as a mirage. Pindupama rupang vedana bubulupama marijikupama sanya sankara kadalupama mayupama vinyanang. No, this is a famous verse. Then formations is like a plantain trunk or banana trunk. The consciousness as an illusion or as a ghost. So here you can see that when you see the perception arising and passing away so fast, sometimes people, they meditate, they see everything arise, pass and so fast. Then the moment you get up, you can't remember a single thing. And then you find that the world that you look at, actually nothing. It can be very shocking. But it is also very liberating once you have accepted it. And so certain times you can use perception as an object of mindfulness moment to moment, but definitely not for beginners. More with people who are more established, then you find that it is a very, very strong vipassana object. And so there's an important sutta that talk about perceptions. One is the Girimananda Sutta, which talks about the 10 perceptions. Then there are others that are shorter in the Anguttara. For example, you talk about first anicca sanya, perception of impermanence. Then you talk about anicca dukkha sanya, perception of suffering in impermanence. Then you have dukkha anatta sanya, that means this non-self in suffering, because there's anatta sanya itself. And then there are other things which are important, like pahana sanya, papa, as in papa, which is the abandonment, cutting, or destruction. Then nirodha sanya, cessation. So these are the very powerful perceptions developed in vipassana. That means the mind that knows very specifically and very clearly and very precisely what these things are in nature. For example, impermanence itself is, you see it disappear, passes away, rise and passes away, change. More clearly you see the change become faster. This means not only the object is transitory, so the perception that watches it is just as transitory. That means there's nothing. No, there's not nothing. It's transcendence, it's going beyond. I think we stop here tonight.